Good morning. Presentation this morning, the first presentation, Madame Sylvie Roy, who's a member of the Abijuat community. She has worked primarily for the ethnic communities in both clinical and organization levels. Or, aha, she changed the word. Instead of organizational, she's worked in organization. She's worked in the fields of education and health and has held the position of Director of Social Welfare in Social Services Department of Atikamekw. As a woman, mother, and professional, she's concerned for the well-being of First Nations children and families. Sylvie is pursuing a doctoral degree at the University of Quebec at Trois-Rivières, and her research project, currently in drafting phase, consists of adapting and normalizing the screening test for development delays in 45 to 56-year-old Atikamekw children. Madame Sylvie Roy. Good morning. Bonjour. Anybody's asleep here? I feel like I'm a long ways away from you. I try to adjust my microphone here. Here we go. I would like to have had a little headset there, Eve, with the microphone. No, sorry about that. I want to be like Britney Spears with maybe I could have done a bit of a jig in the front up here. We're really very happy to be with you this morning. I am honored also to be there with you. I'd like to thank the FNHC again for its confidence in me. It's a good spot, eh? I complain a little bit. It's nice. She doesn't like the spotlight there. I'm surely going to walk around a little bit. I might go down around the tables and so on. I hope I don't trip over anything. I haven't got my high heels on, so I should be okay. Where are the people from Abijuat? One or two over there. Yeah, I saw people from Menwen earlier. Hello. I saw people from Wimo. People from, oh yeah, take it off, honey. There's Inu from Pessimit, I think it is. I'll try and not talk too quickly because of the translation. I hope that things are good with that. Yeah, she's got the headset there with her Britney Spears microphones. Things are working. Yes, I can hear myself. Hey, that's really good service there, guys. Thank you. Maybe I will do a jig. I'll talk like this. She's holding. When we're on the highways, we anyway. She's holding the battery pack up to her mouth rather than the microphone there. That's why people left. Okay, so yesterday, in preparing doing my suitcase and preparing my presentation, I said to myself that I felt like I was really in the right place, that I was feeling good in what I was doing and so on. So this morning, I feel again that I'm in the right place with you. I feel like I'm in a safe place with you. And we are at the right place this morning. I don't know whether your heart is beating quickly. Mine is a little bit faster than usual. In a room in a closed place like this, our hearts tend to beat in unison. They beat together. I don't know whether the room is too big for that, but we'll check a little bit later just how our hearts are beating, how quickly our hearts beat. Nerozvik, she says she hopes she pronounced it well, and I'm sure I didn't. I hope that's the same way that some people, that it is in the right pronunciation in the Menwen Diwik. My favorite translator, who's my mother, who comes from Abidjan, uses this term to talk about First Nations people. Nerozvik. Educate their children, have been educating their children for thousands of years now. And the recipe hasn't changed. It's still the same. So the recipe that Nerozvik used, they still use again today. There's been a lot of change, a lot of ups and downs in the histories of First Nations. There are new institutions which have shown up, one of which we call school. School is recognized. The value of education is an important value to First Nations. It's relatively new in our lives. We're still trying to learn it, to adapt it in our ways of doing things, our way of teaching, and ways of evaluating also. I'd like to present to you different elements, different ingredients which encourage perseverance, which favorize school success in school, but also success in life, in the school of life. I'm trying to see on my page here if there's any important things that I haven't mentioned before seeing getting into the PowerPoint, but I don't see anything on there. So I'm trying some new contact lenses there, and I think that maybe I've got them reversed in the wrong eye or whatever. Not a problem, she says. Okay, there we go. This wonderful woman who is in the process of preparing a moose skin, who's removing the fat. I'm sorry, I don't know the Eskimic term. I've already somebody has already taught me that, but my memory has just somehow doesn't want to retain that particular word. That's my grandmother. My grandmother Margaret, the wife of Nibin, my grandfather. These are what the people of Womatashi suggested to me for to name the picture Ningwit. This picture really speaks to me. It says several things to me. I don't imagine for you it probably evokes a bunch of different things, but probably, if nothing else, time. Time which passes, time that things take to be done. It also really evokes the value of work. In order to obtain something, to have success in reaching your goals, it takes a little bit of work. and work takes time. This picture also talks to me about my attachment to my grandmother, to my broader family also, which is also still very present, and was very present, I'm sure, for you. Obviously, talks to me about my culture of traditional knowledge and ancestral knowledge. And the picture also, I show this at almost every presentation that I do, and I realize that other than the fact that it's very beautiful and that it's my grandmother, I also realized that I really needed my grandmother to be with me. This picture, with this picture, it's almost as if she's standing beside me here. She calms me down. She tells me so in saying that, I feel that my heartbeat has slowed down a little bit. It's taking a more regular heartbeat than my anxiety sort of reduced also. So it's very effective for me. It's a good strategy. All of you who are really sitting here today, and myself also, we're all parents, we're all aunts or uncles, brothers, sisters. And we're very important in the lives of our children. Our children, our nieces and nephews. Parents, obviously, as a parent, the influence and the importance is much greater. But if I understand correctly, the sense of a broadened of the extended family and holistic development of the holistic approach, holistic vision of First Nations, we could say that we have a role which is just as important for children. Obviously, as parents, we're closer to our children, but the importance of the extended family is just as important as the role of a parent. So it's not nothing to really realize something like this. That what we do, that what we live, what we experience, that what we don't do and what we don't experience is important and leaves tracks on our children, or traces. In First Nations, learning takes place throughout our lives and starts before birth and continues right up until your death of a person. So we have an irreplaceable role, and every day we can contribute to the development of our children. So it's not something from time to time or once a week or maybe when I read them a story. Every day, every moment, we can contribute to the development of our children. And on top of that, we don't have to be perfect parents. We have perfect mothers and fathers, or aunts and uncles. We only have to be just good enough. As the first educators, first teachers, First Nations parents have two basic educational tasks, as to say, for the transmission of values, the transmitting of values, and to adequately respond to the needs of the children. Two fundamental tasks which keep us busy full time. So the fundamental needs of the children, survival, giving them a roof over their head, food, protecting them from danger. Their need for security, emotional security, psychological security. A need for love, obviously. A need to have a significant attachment between the parent and the child and the extended family. The background of affirmation, the need to be autonomous, the need for the need to learn. We'll see later the different kinds of learnings. And all sorts of other needs. But let's say that these ones that are listed here are the most fundamental needs that a parent needs to supply or give to his child. The learning which is with First Nations is holistic. It's a very global learning. That means that learning is a whole. It's not segmented. Learning is not segmented into specialties or broken down into specialties. They're not in some form of hierarchy, as to say that learning of a particular idea, say for example an intellectual idea, is not necessarily more important than learning a technical idea. So everything is together. Everything influences one another. Learning is something that takes place throughout a person's life, as I mentioned earlier. More and more we learn things throughout our life through literature or through contemporary experiences. Before that, we didn't really see that. So there has been an influence that we see regarding the vision of First Nations regarding learning, and which coincides with a more modern way of thinking. Learning is made up of traditional knowledge also. We learn in the territory, everything that we learn regarding culture and our identity, that's all a part of learning. Modern knowledge also, with things that we learn, for example, in school, in the different schools, be it professional schools, elementary or high schools. And learning is made up of 4 different dimensions. It's the physical, the mental, the intellectual, and spiritual dimensions. This is something which is very special with specific to Aboriginal learning, on which I'll get into a little later. So learning is individual, it's familial, it's at its community. So what an individual learns, he will pass on to his family, and he will pass on to his community. So everyone learns different things and puts it to the use or to the advantage of others. Is there somebody who's keeping time here to keep track of and to give me a sign? I haven't got anything in front of me. I don't even have a watch. Don't even have my ring with me here. You'll let me know? Okay. We talked earlier. We said that there are 2 fundamental tasks as a parent. We talked about values and the needs of the children. And we also said that an Aboriginal person will transmit values. What values are you concerned with? There are 7 basic values that we call here basically the 7 grandfathers' teachings. So these are things that I remembered from some sacred values. So that loving yourself, loving others, respecting yourself and respecting others, and everything else, and all things in the world. Courage, honesty, humility, wisdom, and truth. If we are able to transmit these values to our children, what a wonderful world we would live in. What's important to know about these values is that we recognize them. We see their manifestation in behavior. So it's not enough to just say, I am an honest person. I have the value of honesty. We have to feel it. We have to take possession of it. We have to see that value in the person's behavior. So if we don't demonstrate a particular behavior, then we can't say that we have X or Y value. So a value should be a part of a person's behavior at the same time. And let me wake up a little bit. And children watch us. Kids are great observers and fantastic imitators. The traditional ways of learning of First Nations was observation, was it not? So a child learned by watching his family work, do a particular activity. So a child learned to survive in the forest, to feed himself, to protect himself when in a shelter by observing the adults. So if you work, you have children. And I'm sure you've seen it yourself. They watch us. They observe us. Just something that happened to me a few years ago. To really illustrate what I'm saying, I went into a class in an ECC, an early childhood center. It was a group of almost 4-year-olds, 3 to 4-year-olds. So I went into the class, and right away the kids all come around me and they look at me. They see how I'm dressed, and they thought maybe I was dressed maybe a little bit differently than their mothers, fathers, or whatever. And they look at me and they see that I'm wearing high heels. That day I was wearing high heels, I don't know. And the little girl said, "Oh, high heels, high heels." They wanted to try on my shoes on. So I sat down at some point, and the little girl who wanted to try on my high heels came and sat beside me. And she was watching me. She was checking me out. She touched my hair, which are curly, and have blonde streaks in them. And then she touched my eyelashes. I must have probably had mascara or something on. And at some point she touched my forehead. And I said to myself, why is she touching my forehead? Because she saw my wrinkles in my forehead. And I said, okay, yeah, I really am being observed here. I found that was kind of funny. So, smile. You're being watched. Talk about the vision of development in First Nations. The four different types of development in contemporary literature, in the Eurocentric vision of development. We talk also about global development. Development sort of a child is something complete, which develops all the different spheres that are there. They influence each other, and we also find in there the idea of holistic development, but not necessarily in the same context, the same vision in that. So, what is the child's development?
Donc, les aspects moteurs, bouger.
Jumping, moving around, it's part of the motor development of a child. So, of course, 2 months child doesn't have the same abilities to develop as a 5 years old child. There is also fine motor skills. Fine motor skills refers to manipulation, the use of fingers. In the observations that I made in the past few years, I've been around for about 20 years working in communities, evaluating children, their development. One of the first observations that I made was the ability, manual ability, not as much the ability to write, but the ability to manipulate objects, be able to get dressed. So this ability develops early in children of First Nations. Language, learning to speak, that begins at birth. The child hears words that he records, and over time he will manage to make words. So it's very important to talk to your child constantly. I know it's not necessarily in our habits to speak a lot, but for the development of children's language, we have to make an effort to speak early so that they can develop a vocabulary, a broad vocabulary as soon as possible. Cognitive development, memory, everything that has to do with thinking, and socio-affective development as well as autonomy. So that's being autonomous, being able to do things by yourself. Of course, based on the child's age. Socio-affective development, the ability to respect others and other children, adults, all of their behaviors. So in the physical aspect of the Aboriginal motricity, everything kind of, it's like a puzzle, everything set fits together, but we use different words. Give you a little example of what the development looks like in terms of fine motor skills. A child between 4 and 6 years old is supposed to be able to run, throw, maybe throw a ball, jump, coordinate his moves. So as a parent, as a grandparent, and uncle or an aunt, it's very important to move with your children, to do activities outside with your children in order to contribute to their motor development. In terms of, again, fine motor skill, we're talking about cutting, we're talking about tearing, tracing, modeling, playing with Play-Doh, for instance, playing in the mud, making sandcastles. Why not do that with your children? 4 or 6 years old, we expect the child to have a certain level of language. In terms of cognitives, we expect the child to be able to solve basic problems, not math problems, but just just demonstrate basic reasoning. You probably heard yourself say that sometimes the child starts to think on their own. They say something and we laugh because we just witness the fact that the child found a solution on his own. So it's very important to stimulate that kind of independent thinking, give them something to think about. For the socio-affective development, 4 to 6, we expect that the child is willing to wait for his turn, to share, to be autonomous, to be able to identify their emotions. Because if you don't help the child put their finger on a specific emotion, he won't be able to manage that emotion. So child development is conditional to the development of a relation, of attachment, love, affection, the care that we provide for a child. It's the food for the child's brain. Food is not only things that you eat. In order to develop our brain, we have to eat and drink good food as much as possible, healthy food. Game meat is the best in the world. Cook it, serve it. So love, affection is the food of the brain. In psychology says that the affective is the engine of the cognitive. So affection is the engine of your global development. A few years ago, and still today in the world, there are still orphanages, places where children who are forsaken or lost their parents end up. They are greeted there by people who generously feed them, dress them, keep them alive. But when you go into an orphanage, you see children of all ages that are almost dead. Their body is alive, their eyes move once in a while. There is sound coming out of their mouth, but the children are frozen in place because they are, yes, they get food, a roof above their head, shelter, but they do not receive love and the care that they need to properly develop. So there are children who simply stop growing. There are children who die. They die because they did not get any love and human warmth from an adult. When we worked on the idea of emotional attachment, it was within the mandate with social services. We tried to define what attachment meant for Atikameks. We worked with women from Wemotashi, and we were told that in Atikamekw, the word attachment does not exist. There's not a specific word for attachment. So, through conversations, women have identified behaviors that are linked to attachment, and these are the red words: Sagho, Mirokwo, Kishtarimyo. So these three words are defined. So for Atikamekw, attachment is to commit to accompany a child, commit to take care of the child, your own child, or some child that is in our care. Take care of the child, love him, respect him, recognize his inherent value. In literature, attachment is defined as a privileged relationship, a specific relationship that connects a child to his parents. What I found in literature regarding the vision of First Nations on attachment is that this connection is not just with the parents, it's with the entire family, what's with the extended family, the grandparents, the extended family. It comes from our way of life not so long ago when we were all together on a given territory. The clan looked after the education and the care of all the children, whether you're the biological parent or not. So it's an important relation, connection, for the development of a child, and for the child's perseverance and success in school and in life. There are various types of attachment. We will talk about the one that concerns us the most, safety attachment. Attachment that brings you a sense of safety. When the parent or someone who takes care of a child is sensitive enough to recognize the needs of a child, and that she is willing and ready to meet these needs, and when she can do it within reasonable time, when a baby cries because the baby is hungry, if you meet the need 2 or 3 hours later, that's not ideal. So, as we are meeting the needs in a timely manner and an adequate manner of the child, a sense of safety develops in the child right from birth, and as time goes by. It's going to help the child to develop his brain. The child of a preschool brain is almost boiling with activity. It's unbelievable what's happening in this brain. It's a brain that wants to develop. It's a brain that wants to be stimulated. So it is essential when we say that the 0 to 5, 6 years are very important years. It's very true. Oh, I only have 10 minutes left. Wow. So the feeling of safety that is provided will help the child today and in his future life to better manage his stress, to become self-confident, and to have trust in his environment, to have trust in others, because others have taken care of meeting his needs. It's also going to help the child to develop positive relationships in life with his peers, lovers to be, and it will prepare the child to properly develop and to learn properly. Traditional, whether it's traditional or modern learning. Self-esteem is not too far from attachment. When you have experienced a positive attachment, it's going to be easier to have a positive look on ourselves and to believe in our abilities, to believe that we are capable of reaching goals. Self-esteem appears around 8 years old. Before we speak about feeling of trust that others will provide the basic necessities for us, and self-esteem develops with through the look of others, through the words that people use towards us. So what we tell children, the good things that we tell children, will help them to have this feeling of self-esteem. Self-esteem is the most beautiful gift that can be passed from one generation to another. How do parents develop self-esteem in a child? Of course, your attitude has to be positive, nurturing. We give the required attention to the child. Every day we highlight positive things, accomplishments, a little favor that the child did to us. We highlight the fact that the child was able to put on his coat alone, that he was able to put his shoes on alone. So we don't only highlight school success, but everything that is positive. We can do that every day. Develop self-esteem in children, is believing in children, is telling them that they are capable. We don't use hurting words, mean words. When someone gives you a compliment and then criticizes you, the critic stays longer with you than the 300 compliments that you just heard. The little child on the previous slide, I will tell him that I love your smile. You make people happy with your smile. And you just contributed to developing this child's self-esteem. You've seen a while ago in the holistic development and learning development in First Nation, there was a spiritual aspect that you don't find in the definition of teaching, in modern teaching approaches. If this dimension exists, it's because it's important and that we have to nurture it as well. It's an integral part of the child's balanced development. Spiritual aspect is part of the healthy and balanced development. I like this sentence. The biggest evil that can fall upon man is to have a poor opinion of himself. History History has taught us to have a bad image of ourselves, First Nations. I believe we are in the process of rebuilding our self-esteem, self-image as individuals, as human beings living on the earth. And we will succeed by developing a strong cultural identity. And in developing this identity by going back to the learnings that are provided by the earth. When we are proud, when our identity is solid, it gives us wings. It helps us to believe in ourselves. It gives us strength. So this aspect is very important. I talked about traditional activities. I should speak about all the rites of passage, the sweat lodge, and all the cultural activities that are very important. Identity and culture should be integrated in all levels. How long do I have? I have 5 minutes left. That's good. When school enters our lives, when children are in age to go to school, we speak about school maturity. What is school maturity? It's nothing more than the development that our children reach based on what I spoke about earlier, but there is a more specific definition is the level of preparation that our children have before they go to school. School is part of First Nations life, so it's essential to prepare them. It doesn't mean that when they're 4, they should know all the colors, and there are some basic knowledge that they must have, and it will give them a better chance to succeed in school later on. Why is it important to prepare our children? Is that we prevent behavioral difficulties and learning difficulties. In school and in life, we prepare them better. It's important to have a routine. You probably all have some sort of routine. Did you know that it's important for your children to feel safe? To have a feeling of control over what's happening. Stimulate language by telling them a story. Putting them in school not too late so that their brain can function well. Feed them properly. They need a minimum hours of sleep every night, and it's a responsibility to give them, to make sure that they get enough sleep. If the child thinks that school is important to you, is going to want to please you. Go to school. We're happy when we see parents coming to the school. We don't ask you to come and teach a class just to be there, to serve a meal, just to be there in the classroom for anything. It pleases the child, it pleases the teachers. Your child is proud that you're there, so go. Don't be shy. Sign the documents, the waivers, and so on. We have a hard time to get these waivers back, so make sure to do that. Call the ECC if it's something that bothers you. Instead of taking your child out of the ECC, sorry. Talk about what concerns you. Also, teenagers need some sort of routine. They need the parents to get up in the morning to be with them while they're having breakfast. They need you to be involved, to be interested in what they do in school, to be involved with the school. One of the messages that I wanted to give you is that all of you are the bearers of knowledge. You are the bearers of culture. You have it within you. Your ancestors have educated you. You have this in your genes. Within you is love that the children need. Educating a child is a gift to the community a gift to humanity. Don't be afraid of being madly in love with your children. It doesn't mean giving everything. It doesn't mean allowing everything. Children need some sort of structure. They need to have a sense of right and wrong, what is allowed, what is not allowed. They need to know that they're not born with it. It's adults, parents that can provide them with that.
There's a lot of different tools. If anybody be interested in picking up the tools that I would brought, I'll be around. You should be able to recognize me. These are basically tools that the Commission has used, but from the Social Services Commission of Quebec and Labrador proposed a few years ago. These deal through all different aspects of development, of a child's development. So you can just have a look at that. It might give you some ideas. It might be something that you could suggest to your brothers and sisters and to your own children, obviously. Don't hesitate to get any information and to participate in the workshops in your communities. This is knowledge which can be very useful and which basically completes our rounds off our knowledge regarding child development. Just to complete up with my fetish expression, education is one of the means through which First Nations will have access to a future which would be up to the same level as their past as a men and women and as a proud nation. I hope that I've given you the desire to get more committed to with your children. Also to think about becoming involved with your niece and nephews, maybe with your neighbors also. They'd be more like your children, your own children. I don't know if there's any time left for questions. Yes. Yes, can I go back a little bit? Okay, then we'll back up. Thank you very much for your attention. It's time now for questions. Or don't be shy. If there's anything that you would have liked me to elaborate a little bit on at the time, it's time right now. I finally didn't get into that jig that I was suggesting. Questions or thinking, reflection? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the tools that you mentioned? So, a calendar of activities addressed to children from 0 to 12 months, in which we explain in very simple words what is development and what the element of the 5 dimensions that I mentioned earlier. So there's suggest activities in here to children here. We're from 0 to 12 months old. What we can do with him to help in his development. So there's a lot of pictures with drawings which really resemble us, really are similar to us. You can put pictures in here, first anniversary, first birthday. It's almost like a scrapbooking situation. When the first years that I really discovered this, I really think it's just as great and just as interesting when I did earlier. Dorothy was looking at that earlier and she said, oh yeah, gee, that reminds me of when my children were that age. I went through that and I did that with them. So this little calendar for 0 to 12 months olds, another one from 11 to 12, English, French. There's also one for children from 3 to 5 years old and 5 and 6 years old. There's also a series of folders, fold-outs, which for more or less the same ages, and which gives you information on their development, what should be done, and what at different ages is. Also give them different activities to be done at home with crayons, things which are very easy to find. So another one here, again developed by the Commission. Also some very interesting books which are also easy to read, which deals with child development, which are edited by St. Justin's Hospital. So you find some very interesting reading in there, something very, very simple to, easy to read. English and French as the second language sometimes can be a little difficult, but these are relatively easy to read. There's questions in there also. At the gentleman over here. Je veux plutôt faire un commentaire. C'est une belle présentation. Vous avez beaucoup de bonnes idées de la façon de développer les enfants des Premières Nations. Parce que, en fait, quand je pense à notre histoire comme peuple autochtone, souvent, nos enfants ne sont pas enseignés la vérité de ce que les colonisateurs ont fait à notre peuple. Et quand on connaît la vérité de l'histoire des Premières Nations, ils grandissent de façon plus confiante. Ils peuvent faire face à n'importe quel défi qu'ils puissent rencontrer, que ce soit au secondaire ou au niveau collégial même. Parce que j'ai entendu plusieurs élèves qui parlent d'être ridiculisés au niveau secondaire et au niveau collégial, qu'on les mange, qu'ils appellent les mangeurs de bologna, des bougons, des récipients de bien-être social, les personnes qui n'ont aucune importance dans le développement de l'Amérique. Quand ils connaissent pas l'histoire ou la vérité de leur histoire, ils ne peuvent pas répondre à ces commentaires-là. Et plusieurs parmi eux finissent par décrocher. Parce que le système scolaire avec lequel ils participent, qui sont des systèmes occidentaux, pour moi, il y a beaucoup de mensonges là-dedans, surtout quand ça vient au peuple autochtone. On n'enseigne pas la vérité. Je ne parle pas des écoles autochtones, mais des écoles européennes où les enfants vont aujourd'hui. Mais si on leur enseignait la vérité,
because it's not nice. It was one of it was a Holocaust committed on Native people. Millions and millions were murdered. And a lot of times our people do not know that. And they're branded in mainstream as savages who needed to be civilized, when in fact they were already civilized, as far as I know. But a lot of times they're not told this in the schools, and therefore I guess this is why they feel ashamed to a point. And in my way of thinking, I think we need to concentrate more on our own history from our point of view, our elders, instead of always taking the texts that are written by European colonializers. So I think when I was growing up, when I was involved in education, I began to know more. Today, I can answer to any professor, or anyone that's criticized by people, and they end up listening, and a lot of times they themselves are ignorant to the fact of the real history of what happened to Indian people. I think to know your own history, to know who you are, makes you a stronger person. And I think that's what we need to teach our children for them to succeed, not only here in North America, but in the world. So I just thought I'd bring that up. I really appreciated your presentation. Thank you.